Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Straight Talk Vermont show. My name is Bruce Wilson. I'm Executive Director of Service Rendered Incorporated, and Straight Talk Vermont is one of our programs. And I'm very fortunate to have as a guest today is Dr. Jayne Morgan, cardiologist at Piedmont Healthcare. And wow, she does a whole lot. So, well, first of all, Dr. Morgan, could you tell us about Piedmont Healthcare? What is it? What do you do there?
Sure,
Or what,
sure. So Piedmont Healthcare is the largest health system in the state of Georgia. So we are a series of hospitals. We have 18 medical campuses across the state of Georgia, and we give care really to everybody across the state. We are the single largest healthcare system.
Yeah, I know you guys are gigantic. And so let's just jump right into it because what was your interest in being like a cardiologist? How'd that come to be?
Yeah, I think growing up in my neighborhood, we had quite a few physicians in the neighborhood. And even though, and I'm friends with their children, even though my parents weren't physicians, my mother was an academic, actually, chairman of education at Spelman. Um, I I imagine that I had early exposure to Black doctors, which I didn't realize at the time was an unusual experience that many people grew up really and never met a Black doctor. And I knew several right in my neighborhood. And so I think, that goes a long way when we talk about, environment and what type of environment you're living in and what neighborhood you live in. So without anybody ever talking about physician, just I had this broader perspective of what may or may not be possible, what I may or may not be interested in. I remember sitting at one of my friends' homes, and I used to thumb through her father's medical books, not to read them, but just to look at all the quote unquote scary pictures of all of these people with diseases. And I would just be so fascinated to say, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? So it was almost sort of like a little game, but really I was becoming interested in medicine without realizing it. Nobody's really talking to me about it.
Mm. Wow, thank you. I'm so glad that you decided to be a doctor, and thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I guess I first we kind of I don't know what you call LinkedIn partners or LinkedIn friends. I don't know what it is,
Mhm,
but you
mhm.
have um you have the Stairwell Chronicles there
Yeah,
and that's so awesome. I
yeah.
love seeing you on LinkedIn. Talking about issues and concerns about particularly around the COVID.
Mhm.
Um, so I think you're the executive director for Piedmont on the COVID
That's
on
right.
COVID
On the
affairs.
COVID task force at
Mhm.
Piedmont.
Awesome, awesome. And so let's just talk about a few things. So you had, I'm in Vermont, the
Okay.
Burlington, Vermont, where I live,
Yeah.
and I just want to, give you some. When I came here from Chicago, when I graduated from Northwestern University.
Mhm.
Um, I came in '89. It's the whitest state in America, and it still is. I mean, so it's not a lot of people who looks like me who lives here. And so I sit on a lot of different other boards and anti-racism and things like that to try to help educate individuals who don't
Right.
look like me how
Right.
to work, how we can work together and look at
Mhm.
people who look like me using real facts, not stereotypical means.
Right.
So you had a vaccine message to Black Americans because I know some of the Black people I know, and I still know one person who haven't had the vaccines.
Right.
And
Mm.
so, what was your message to Black American? What did you say to us?
Yeah. So one of the things in my Stairwell Chronicles that I addressed to, specifically to Black Americans was that we should be confident in this vaccine, confident in the data that was submitted to the FDA that provided this emergency use authorization via which these vaccines are available, because we were enrolled in that trial, in the Moderna trial at 10.3%. And in the Pfizer trial, Blacks were enrolled at 9.8%. The Johnson & Johnson trial actually enrolled 13.1% African Americans. And if you include Africans, the total was 19%.
Mhm.
By and large, Black Americans do not participate in clinical trials and research because of all of the historical atrocities that have been committed against us in the name of the advancement of medicine and science, where we were sacrificed involuntarily for the advancement of medicine and science that we all enjoy today. So by and large, because of that, we don't really participate because we don't trust it. And so we should actually understand that these vaccine companies were intentional and purposeful in actually seeking out people who are Black and brown to enroll in these trials because they understood that these were going to be global medicines. They were not only going to be for white Americans or white male Americans, but when their vaccine was developed, it had the potential to go across the entire world. And the entire world is made up of all kinds of people. When we also look at that data that was submitted to the FDA and look only at the Black American population, what we see is 2 weeks following the second dose of the vaccine, there were no incidences of symptomatic COVID-19. What that means is even though you hear about these efficacy rates of 94, 95, 72, all of these efficacy rates, meaning how well the vaccines work, in Black Americans who had zero incidences of symptomatic COVID-19 following the second dose, our individual, our collective, shall I say, efficacy rate was 100%. Imagine that.
Wow.
And so we should feel confident in this data because we have this data. And while it falls somewhat short of being truly representative of where we are in the population in the mosaic of America at 13.4%, they came pretty close at 10.3%, 9.8%, 13.1%. And don't forget, these are large trials, 30,000 people in the Moderna trial, 40,000 in the Pfizer, 42,000. So when we talk about that collectively, that's a huge number of people. Mm-hmm. And we should feel confident, therefore, that the data that went to the FDA is representative of us. That safety data is representative of all of us.
Yeah. Well, a lot of Black folks, have this idea. Well, I guess it is a lot. Speaking if we're looking at it as across the country, know some of the people I know thinking about it was some type of experiment, on Black people,
Right.
And that they were just going to use us for something, whatever. And then at the beginning, I remember at the beginning of the COVID-19 back in March or around that time, it was a lot of articles, confusing articles saying that Black people won't get the virus because our skin melanin and all this stuff, And so a lot of people, Black people that I, because I work with a wide range of individuals in this state, were saying that, well, we don't have nothing to worry about. We won't get the virus. We won't acquire the virus, and we don't have to wear masks, or we didn't have to, because it's everywhere. Everybody's saying that Black people just won't get it because it's got to do with our skin, our melanin. Right. And so, myth, right? But
in fact,
does the virus have anything to do with melanin?
In fact, we've been disproportionately impacted. So we should completely understand that is fallacy. Melanin in the skin does not provide protection from COVID-19. African Americans have been disproportionately impacted by this COVID-19 pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so absolutely, melanin is providing zero, I want to be clear, zero protection, right. Zero. Exactly. So that is completely untrue.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I heard it too. I read it some places. I saw it, and I was like, man, is somebody just trying to get how I think it's how we think sometimes, or how I think sometimes is are we trying to, if people trying to are we going to trying to make us acquire the virus?
Right.
More of us, is right. That's why they printing that? Is why they doing that? But that's a whole nother topic, whatever. But and so, so Piedmont partnered with Ebenezer Baptist Church and you. So
Yeah.
what is that about? You know, I mean, that's a famous church, Martin Luther King Church in
Yeah.
Georgia.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what did you what the partnership look like? What was that about?
Yeah, so the partnership is great. We partner with other churches. Ebenezer happens to be my home church as well.
Mhm.
And we are really looking in this role as I'm leading the COVID task force to really get out into the community and begin to understand social determinants of health and how that impacts your longevity, how it impacts your hospitalization, how it impacts the length of stay of your hospitalization, the number of complications that you have, and really to begin to understand that maybe the care of our patients doesn't begin when they reach the emergency room doors. Maybe it begins on the other side of those doors. And we need to get out into the community and see where people are living, how they are living, and begin to build these relationships and trust and make certain that we can provide access, which may mean bringing the access to you and not having you try to figure out transportation to get to a medical system. And once you get there, it's incredibly complicated to navigate. And so this is sort of this reverse paradigm where we are beginning utilizing lessons that we've learned from COVID. There have been some positive lessons learned from this horrible pandemic of how we can do things better.
Yeah, awesome. And once again, thank you for partnering with the churches, not only Ebenezer Baptist Church, but all the other churches that you
That's
partner with to
right.
try to get the word out so
Word of
people can
Faith
actually be
Church,
boots on the
many
ground.
churches throughout
Yeah.
the city
Mhm.
that we have been very interested in developing these community partnerships, providing vaccines, and really having long-term relationships with these organizations.
Did they have vaccines into churches? Did they do that? Did
We
they
did.
do?
Oh,
Oh, cool.
we've done lots of vaccine clinics as well at these
Mhm.
churches, and that's our primary purpose for going. But
Mhm.
after that, we are invited back to do another vaccine clinic, or
Yeah,
invited back to be on panels, or
yeah, certainly.
I was part of the Women's Day program, and so that's part of understanding and being a part of the community, interacting, integrating with the community, bringing Piedmont to the people as opposed
Right,
to the people having to reach out to
right,
the hospital
right.
system.
And
Mhm.
thank you once again. I can thank you all through this whole thing, and I probably will, to being like boots on the ground, because that's so important. How can we get the message out there if we sit like in our office? I pride myself at being boots on the ground,
Mhm.
and actually working with the people in the community who I serve, and
Right.
I'm very proud of that. But okay, let me talk about the vaccinations for a second. So there's a Pfizer,
Yes. Yes.
Moderna, and
Uh-huh.
then
Moderna.
Johnson and Johnson.
Yes.
Now, now, okay, what's it? I know Johnson and Johnson, like they had the one shot deal, and
Uh-huh.
but it came something was something different or wrong with it or something.
So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine had a pause, a 10-day pause, because they wanted to look at specifically one of the side effects that's called CVST, cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. And what that is a special type of blood clot that can impact your brain. And they wanted to take a look at that and see what was happening. And so they paused the trial such that they could take a closer look to make certain that people were not being harmed. And so you have to remember at that time, there were 6 cases, almost 7 million doses had been given. So this was an incredibly sensitive process that you pick up 6 individual cases out of 7 million people.
Right.
That's so even though people were concerned about the pause in the scientific community, what that tells us is that this is really being safeguarded and this is really being watched. The pause was an
Yeah.
incredible thing for us to see. And
Mhm.
we understood that this was being, very highly regulated and very sensitive.
Mhm.
So that heartened us to see that. And what they discovered was they discovered a total of 15 cases when they actually adjudicated, where it really went through all of them. And they were divided into the cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, and some were other types of blood clots that you may get in your lung or in your legs. All of them, though, are treatable And that was another reason that they wanted to pause, because these specific types of blood clots have the propensity to be treated with standard blood clot medicine when you get to the hospitals. And we wanted to have the opportunity to educate physicians and medical centers that these were special types of blood clots that you cannot give the standard therapy. So we had to have specific testing. It's called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, such that these blood clots could be treated appropriately. And so if they're treated appropriately, they are highly treatable. The problem is physicians not recognizing them early. So we wanted to make certain that that was done. Again, incredibly rare, incredibly rare, these side effects. And so the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is back on the market. We welcomed it back. It is very effective. We were happy to have it. And we are happy that it has been part of our workhorse to get us towards herd immunity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that answer. And I was, for me, I know, has anybody died from the vaccination? I mean, that's really that just died from it, not for no other causes or, other medical means that.
Right. And so there have been deaths after the vaccine. A small number of deaths in the hundreds of millions of doses that have been done. All those deaths will need to be adjudicated, because don't forget, people who are very sick or who have other medical conditions also get vaccines. And so the vaccine could have been just a red herring. They were sick already, happened to get a vaccine, and then the death is blamed on the vaccine when the vaccine just was a red herring. It was just something that they happened to do. That being said, I think we should understand that there probably are a small number of deaths that may be specifically related to the vaccine if a person has some type of unusual reaction to it, or an unusual side effect that is not recognized and treated appropriately. So we see these incidences of myocarditis, which is an inflammation around the heart, with our messenger RNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, entirely treatable. We see it in younger people, but you have to be able to recognize it and seek help and be treated. And I think that's another story about access to medical care, access to information, access to education. Access is not equitable, and is not equitable in this country. And so we see this disparate outcomes at times in our medical care.
And I'm so thankful because, I take myself as, smarter than the average bear or whatever, but to see you on LinkedIn with your show, Steroid Chronicles, oh man, I learned so much. I was like, wow, thank you for hitting, and you was like precise, it wasn't, you didn't go over amount or anything. You just hit the points, it was all, as they say, all meat, no fat,
Right.
So I learned a lot, and I shared information to people who I know about things that you taught me. So I want to thank you for that too.
Now, and so for your listeners, Steroid Chronicles are a series of videos. I have an entire catalog of videos where I answer a single question about the COVID vaccine in 60 seconds or less, in a conversational manner. I'm just sitting on the stairs talking with you like you would talk to your neighbor, talk to your sister. And I give you the information in a very small vignette. I'm not answering 10 questions. I'm only answering a single question. So you can follow me if you like, look through the catalog, select a question that you have, and listen to me explain it in 60 seconds. If you don't like the explanation, you really only wasted a minute of your time, right? You can't be too mad at me.
Right. Can you let us know what your website is? And
it's Dr. Jayne Morgan, Dr. Jayne, Jayne, and then Morgan, Morgan. And I'm on Instagram. You can follow me Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And I have this, entire catalog of Steroid Chronicles. More will be coming out next week. And see if your question is there. If there's a specific question that you have that I haven't answered, feel free to submit a question, and maybe I'll do a Steroid Chronicle on it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So Oh man, you hit home like perfect, on your Stereo Chronicles show. But let me ask you a question about what does inequity and obstacle in clinical research and trial mean to you? I know you talked about that,
Mhm.
and it's it. Okay. Did you
No,
understand what I'm saying?
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
one of the things that I'm really passionate about is we need to be able to begin to increase the recruitment of minorities, Black and Browns, but specifically Black Americans, into clinical trials. We have to understand that our best and our brightest thinking goes into these clinical trials. When we enroll in clinical trials, you have a research coordinator or a nurse with whom you have 24-hour contact. You have a physician or principal investigator that's overseeing you locally. And then there is a regional physician who's overseeing the local physician. And there's a national physician who's overseeing the regional physician, who's overseeing the local physician, who's overseeing the research coordinator. I mean, you have a team of people just for you. Imagine that. Even I don't get health care like that. I don't have 24-hour access to anybody, and I work at the hospital. So, clinical
Awesome.
trials, if you are uninsured or underinsured, is a way to get access to health care. Pharmaceutical and device companies often will pay for your medical care while you're enrolled in these trials because they need the data and they need for you to be able to be compliant with the with whatever the regimen is, the number of follow-up appointments, taking the medications on time, that type of thing. And so it's very important that we participate in clinical trials because if we don't, what happens is what happens now. Drugs are developed and they have no data on anyone other than white people, generally white men. And what that means is the first time a drug is prescribed to you is in the doctor's office. That's the first time you see it. And so then if you have a side effect to this drug, you're out at Disney World, on the soccer field, on a cruise, at a grocery store. You don't have 24-hour access to anybody. You don't have a number in your pocket. You're just on your own. And so when people say, I don't want to be in clinical trials because I'm going to have a side effect, you have to think on which end of this spectrum would you rather have side effects? Would you rather have at the beginning where you're in a controlled environment with FDA oversight? Or would you rather have it on the opposite end after a drug has been approved with no information on you and you're on your own out in the real world the first time that drug is being given? We have to move away from exploitation to representation. And part of the reason we're still stuck on exploitation is the fact of the matter is we haven't been provided any additional information on clinical trials since the Tuskegee experiment. The last
Mhm.
we heard of clinical trials was the Tuskegee experiment, and we never heard anything else. And the last thing that I will say is when Donald Trump was the president of the United States and he contracted COVID-19, he was sitting in the White House, 74 years old, overweight, desaturating, meaning his oxygen levels were dropping. We all in the medical community understood that he was in trouble, regardless of the stonewalling that his physicians at Walter Reed were presenting. What happened? He was airlifted to Walter Reed and immediately given a drug under emergency use authorization, a monoclonal antibody therapy from Regeneron that was in clinical trials. That investigational drug is credited with interrupting his downward trajectory of health from COVID-19. That drug came from a clinical trial. The only other people in the world who received that drug at that time were in clinical trials. Why would we deny ourselves? Why do we continue to allow medicine to be practiced this way? That's because we've had no further information since the Tuskegee experiment. And so
Right.
it is time to really understand what clinical trials mean and how important they are to your health, to health access, and narrowing the gap in health equity. And the last thing that I will say is when we talk about oncology trials or cancer trials, there are specific cancers that have a higher preponderance in African Americans, specific types of breast cancers, prostate cancers, colon cancers. Cancer trials have been shown definitively to increase the rate of remission of cancer. That's the trial itself, not even the drug that's approved. And yet we don't even enroll in those trials. And then the data that comes out is data on white men, and it's not even a cancer that primarily affects them. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
And so this is what I tried to do to start to fill in this gap, this 60, 70-year gap since Tuskegee. A lot has happened. And we want to make certain that we begin to look at clinical trials from a different perspective.
So, wow, I get it. I really get it. I learned a lot. I continue to keep learning from you. And so another thing too, so you're the executive director of COVID Task Force at Piedmont Healthcare. And so, I mean, and we talked about a lot right now, but what exactly is your role?
Yeah, so my role is a lot with community outreach and education. And that's part of what you see in the Stairwell Chronicles, providing education, because the encapsulation of my role really is in addressing vaccine hesitancy. And to address vaccine hesitancy and improve the rate of acceptance of vaccine and to help us move towards herd immunity, it really requires information. That's what people need. They need information. Without information, what happens? Our imaginations take over. And down this social media rabbit hole we go, right? Where there are tons of other rabbits down there. Everybody's reproducing. Now you're in there with thousands of rabbits in a dark hole. Get out of that hole. Come out into the light and listen to science. And so my role is to provide information, to provide education, to do community outreach, to engender trust in the vaccines and the vaccine process, to develop these partnerships with the healthcare system, and to also analyze the data within our system as well to determine how we might be able to address health outcomes in a better and more proficient way as well.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the Stairwell Chronicles. I know people who are listening or tuning in, they can find all this information about your shows, and they can also find out a lot about everything well, not everything, because you're doing so much. You definitely boots on the ground. But they can just tune into Dr. Jayne Morgan. That's Jayne Morgan. And they can look up and they'll find a lot about you and your shows. So let's talk about Stairwell Chronicles for a minute. Now, one of your shows, and these are like topics from your shows, and you talked about heart disease and you talked about the vaccine, but is there a link between heart disease and COVID vaccine?
So that link is with the messenger RNA vaccines, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, not the Johnson & Johnson. And that in younger populations, like under the age of 40 or 45, we can see this entity called myocarditis. And what that means is you get an inflammation of your heart becomes inflamed. And generally you will know if you have that. You might have chest pain or shortness of breath or difficulty catching your breath when you're walking. You just don't feel well. And so if you come to the hospital, we can certainly treat that. But this is a rare, again, I want to emphasize rare side effect of the messenger RNA vaccines only. So that's Pfizer and Moderna. It is not a side effect of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
So when I got my first vaccination here in Vermont, like my shoulder started hurting the next day. But I stayed at my sister's house. I was just chilling. And she said I spent the night. She said I talked all night.
Oh, really?
I don't know if that had anything to do, but I don't normally talk like that. She said I was like talking, having a great old
Talk
time,
in
and
your sleep.
she's like, Bruce, are you all right? I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, I'm all right. Let me get back to this conversation. Leave me alone.
Yeah, you're having a good conversation. Now,
Having a good time.
don't forget that if you have any side effect that you think is related to this vaccine, you can report it in this app that you download called V as in Victor, V Safe, SAFE, V as in Victor, Safe. And then you can put whatever you want in there. So, hey, I had the vaccine and I talked in my sleep all night. Put it in the V Safe app. We are collecting all of that data.
Yeah, and then the second vaccine, I think they were telling me make sure you stay hydrated, stay hydrated, stay. And they didn't tell me on the first time, and then my shoulder hurt the next day too. But
Mhm.
I didn't feel. I didn't feel like myself. I don't know. Could it be just my own tiny little brain? But I just didn't feel like I'm executive director and I do a lot of things, and I just
Mhm.
didn't feel like I just didn't feel like in place to do it. You know what I mean? I didn't know
Right.
it had nothing to do with the virus, nothing, but I just chilled around the house. I didn't go nowhere.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure,
Mhm.
but I who knows, it's just gonna be me, Yeah, I don't think there's no, I don't know, it's just me probably. But um so when people, because there's still a lot of people out there who haven't got all this yeah, it's kind of weird to say got all your shots,
Right.
because
Right.
but it's true. But so, how many people do you know about a number that how many people haven't got the vaccine yet? Do you know how many people still
So
need to get it?
about a third of the population of America still has not received at least one vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So we are about two-thirds of the way where we want to be. And we never really thought we'd get to 100%.
Right.
70% was the goal, but certainly as we push towards herd immunity, because it's just so infectious and contagious, we probably should be up closer to 80%.
Okay. Now, is like when they ask me, what show do you want to shot in? Is it a better side? And this is things all on your show. People can look on
Right,
there, look
right,
at your show, and
absolutely. You can
so
look up Stairwell Chronicle. The name of this one is there a better side to get your shot?
right,
And
no
so
doubt.
the answer is yes. We generally would recommend that you receive not just the COVID shot, any shot that you're getting in your non-dominant arm. So the non-dominant arm is the arm that you don't use as much, the one that you don't use for writing. So if you are right-handed, then you would probably get the shot in your left arm. If you were
Mm-hmm.
left-handed, you would get it in your right arm. The reason for that is that the vaccine, any vaccine, can cause shoulder and arm stiffness and soreness. And if you receive this vaccine in your um, non dominant side, then you're likely to cradle that arm and not move it. And we want you to move it. So we want you to get the vaccine on the side of your body that you use to write. So if you're right-handed, we want you to get the vaccine on your right side. If you're left-handed, we want you to get the vaccine on your left hand, your left side, because you are likely to use that arm a lot, move it around, that continues to circulate the vaccine and decrease the stiffness. So it's exactly counterintuitive to what you would think. You would think, oh, let me get it in the arm that I'm not going to use because I don't want my right arm to be stiff because I need to use it later. No, you want that arm to be stiff because you're going to use it. That actually decreases the stiffness.
Mm-hmm. And I know you talked about people who like me, Black people, African American people, um, and all the stereotypical things that some of us thought of about the virus, but and then one of your shows is the COVID vaccine safe for Black people?
Mm-hmm.
And is there a difference? Is there a different from well, there's a difference between black and white, but you know what I'm trying to say, as far as um our bodies and our
Mm-hmm.
how we
Mm-hmm.
made up. Is it different?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a different?
Right.
And should
And
we
so when we ask to have representation in trials, we're not saying, oh, because we're different. We metabolize things differently, or our blood is different. What we're saying is we may have different medications on board. We may eat different kinds of food. We may live in different environments. We may be exposed to different types of toxins. So all of this comes into play, which is why we need to also be included in these trials, because you need people from all perspectives and all walks of life. We don't all live, eat, exercise, work, play
Okay.
the same. So our experiences, our exposures, the medications that we use that we may be taking, or medications that we are prescribed that we may not be taking, could all just be different. And we want to make sure that we understand every single person who will receive this vaccine such that we have representation.
Okay, cool. And like I said, everyone can check out Dr. Jayne Morgan's show. Jayne spelled Jayne. Just
Thank
look
you.
her up. Just Google her name, and this is a world of information that's going to come up. All the Steroid Chronicle shows will come up. Now, I'm going to ask you these few questions. I'm going to give you an opportunity to add anything you want about the young people. Like, and when you say young people, what's that age group that really are really vibrant and maybe their immune system are stronger and I can't say that they didn't need the vaccination, but you can tell me.
Yeah. So, when we talk about people who are 30 or 35 and less, there's kind of this sense of invincibility. I don't need anything. I'm healthy. Even if I get COVID, I won't be sick. But what you have to remember is that even though you may not be sick when you get COVID, you still have a 30% chance of developing long haul syndrome. And long haul syndrome are symptoms that you could develop down the road, long after you've recovered from COVID, even if you weren't sick. Loss of taste or smell, difficulty with your memory. So, including inflammation of your heart and lungs. And so these are all symptoms that if you were previously active, you may even have difficulty climbing stairs because you're constantly winded. And so the irony and the tragedy is, while you are correct in that you may not be sick if you were to get COVID-19, but it's like putting a gun to your head and putting one bullet in the chamber and spinning that chamber and pulling the trigger. You don't know if you'll be part of the 30% that moves on to these long-term problems. So why would you risk your health and maybe long-term or permanent disability when you are so young? When we have a vaccine that's available to you that not only will prevent COVID, but it prevents long haul syndrome as well. So you must begin to think about that. And I know it's hard when you're young to think about long-term consequences. You're not accustomed to thinking long-term. But if you were to become ill and disabled over a period of time, it is devastating to anyone. It's especially devastating to people who are very young, in the prime of their lives.
Yeah, and now people can actually, like I said again, can tune into your shows and learn about the long haul syndrome, or they can tune in and find out the facts that you give
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I think that, well, first of all, man, I would say come to Vermont. 'Cause I know. Well, we need people like you. What I mean, to come to Vermont. People who looks like you. And me. We need you here. You tell it pretty straight. You just not because this is me looking like me, but the
Mhm.
way how you teach us. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, you're straight up down to earth. You boots on the ground. You tell it like it is, and you get all the meaningful facts in no time. People watch your shows. It's like 2 minutes, 1 minute, and it's not long at all, and
Right.
they like, but you have so much ingredients and facts in there, the epidemiology of whatever it is,
Right.
you have it all there. And do we need that? Yes. Do people at University of Vermont and St. Michael College and Champlain College and Castleton College and Norris University, do they need to hear you say these things? Yes. And so one day I'm gonna be talking to you about it, because I work with I have a program called United College Club, And there's all those colleges and the students who go to those colleges who work with us, and we help them with their goals, dreams, aspirations, provide internships, things like that. And so, man, I learned so much
Invite me
myself.
up. Invite me up. I'm happy to come and talk to people. Like you said, it's really boots on the ground. I'm not on
Yeah.
any special organization and any special, it's just boots on the ground.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm passionate. This is important for the preservation of life.
Yeah.
And I am utilizing my medical background, my research background, all of the time that I've spent in management and leadership in a hospital system, and then just the ability to communicate and translate science into terms that everyone can understand, this demystification of science. Let's just talk in terms that we all understand. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to invite you up because I sit on the epidemiology work group for here, and we have education around drugs and alcohol, tobacco, those type of things, and so it's important. I always include all of that in everything we do. I mean, my program have over 50 awards, and I always drugs and alcohol, tobacco, and health, disparities in health, is very important to me, equity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And so I might have to just bring up on our team. I have an incredible, team here, and incredible sponsors, and my board of directors are very important in this state. And so we can talk about it. But so do you want to add anything, Dr. Jayne Morgan, to what we've been talking, or anything? I can't wait to see your next Stairwell Chronicle. I look forward, when I get up in the morning, I look forward for your shows. I really do. I do. Yes, I do.
Well, great. I hope your listeners follow along as well. I am pleased to have been invited to come today. I am happy to answer questions, to talk with people, to come to Vermont. We are truly all in this together. I truly feel this all the way down in my soul. And I really dedicate everything that I'm doing in my career currently to moving us towards herd immunity. So,
no doubt about it.
It's a pleasure.
No, it's my pleasure too. And Vermont is a beautiful state. You can look at it as the Green Mountain State, and it's so much. It's a lot of things to do here. You'll like it. Our Church Street Marketplace and different things we have to offer here. It's the Green Mountain State, and it's the foliage and the mountains and the lakes. And this is one of our famous things we are. And but I was born and raised in Chicago, so since I've been here, since before COVID, every other month I'll fly home, to Chicago, because my family there, my daughter's there, and plus I got some real estate there, and so and it feels so good, just to fly home, get around skyscrapers, get on North Michigan Avenue with all my friends, and then fly back. So, I'm glad I left Chicago. I'm back in Vermont again, so I got the both for both worlds. So once again, Dr. Jayne Morgan, thank you for coming on Straight Talk.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for introducing me to your show and to your listeners.
No, it's going to be like another part 2 on this.
Perfect.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.